Sounds True presents the Neurodharma of Love. Rewire your brain for healthy relationships with Rick Hanson. And now Session 1, The Foundations of Self-Directed Neuroplasticity.
Hello, I'm Rick Hanson, a neuropsychologist, author, and meditation teacher. And since we'll be focusing on relationships, I should also introduce myself to you as someone who happens to be a son, a brother, a husband, a father, and a friend. In this program, we'll be exploring what is for most people the source of their greatest joys as well as their greatest sorrows, their connections with others, at home, at work, in bed, across the dinner table, in the neighborhood, in shops, in traffic, and in the world altogether. Think about one or more relationships that are important to you. On the one hand, what's it feel like when you are appreciated, liked, or loved? On the other hand, what's it feel like when there is disappointment, hurt, distance, rejection, or anger? To increase your joys in relationships and to decrease or at least cope better with your sorrows, I'll share ideas and information from psychology, brain science, and contemplative practice, as well as from my 40-plus years as a therapist and teacher. And in particular, I want to focus on practical things you can do inside yourself or in your relationships to feel better and be more effective in these relationships. Let me give you a preview of what I'll be covering in 4 basic sessions. In Session 1, we'll begin with a conceptual foundation, exploring powerful ideas and important research related to topics like experience-dependent neuroplasticity. In other words, how you can use your mind to change your brain, to change your mind for the better. I'll also explore inner strengths, what it actually takes to grow more self-worth inside, more feelings of being cared about, more resilience, compassion, assertiveness skills, happiness, and other inner strengths. We'll also explore the brain's evolved negativity bias and how to beat it by turning everyday experiences into lasting inner strengths, what I call taking in the good. We'll also get into the research on how love, broadly defined, shaped the evolution of the brain, and also how our brain today goes about meeting our relationship needs. As a particular example of that, I'll talk about attachment theory, both in terms of what affects us when we're young, in terms of leading to secure or insecure attachments, as well as what we can do today to work through insecurities in relationship and establish a more felt sense of being really secure on solid ground in your important relationships. This focus on attachment will take us into a recognition of interdependence, of the fact that our fates are tied up with those of other people. And then we'll wrap up the session with an exploration of the overarching principle of benevolence, of non-harming, of wishing well toward oneself as well as toward others. And then in the remainder of this program, we'll focus on a number of experiential practices to heal old relationship wounds and grow resources inside yourself, plus cover key interpersonal approaches and skills. In Session 2, Being a Friend to Yourself, we'll explore things like getting on your own side, feeling cared about, self-compassion, mindful self-acceptance, calming yourself, feeling strong, growing a kind of inner caring committee that nurtures and protects you inside your own mind. And, of course, establishing what it feels like to have a sense of boundaries, to stand up to the inner critic inside yourself, and receive deep feelings of being special and valued and prized, as well as opening to and kind of crossing over the final taboo and feeling like a good person. Then, in Session 3, the core of relationships, we'll start by strengthening the neural circuits of empathy for the actions, feelings, and thoughts of other people. On that foundation, then, we'll get into compassion, kindness, and the cultivation of these, including happiness at the welfare of others. We'll then explore this important balance between autonomy and intimacy, distance and closeness, separation and joining, and finish out with an exploration of what it's really like to track the wants of oneself and others. Then, in session 4, kindness and assertiveness, we'll begin with a sense of being connected to everything as a whole as a foundation for being both kind and strong with other people. And then in session 4 on kindness and assertiveness, we'll start with an experiential practice on being a whole person. And then we'll explore the important themes of autonomy and intimacy. And then on that foundation, we'll get into a lot of practicalities about how to communicate effectively with other people and assert yourself. Wrapping up the session with a sense of expanding the circle of us to include the whole wide world. So as you can see, there's a lot of material here, and I'm really excited about it. To get the most out of this program, be aware of the fact that the methods I'll present are based on the historically unprecedented coming together of the Western sciences of psychology and neurology with the great contemplative traditions of the world. In particular, of those contemplative traditions, the one I'll draw on most here is Buddhism, which is the one that I'm most trained in, plus the one that's had the most crossover with Western science. But there's no attempt here to convert you to any point of view, including psychology and neurology, as well as certainly Buddhism. Always see for yourself what makes sense, and especially what is personally useful, and leave the rest. For the experiential material in the program, the guided practices, feel free to alter my suggestions to whatever will have the most benefit for you. You can pause the program if you want to spend more time with a particular suggestion, or simply know that you can come back to it again later. In particular, take care of yourself, and if anything gets stirred up that you are uncomfortable with, certainly not my intention for you, but if it does happen, I recommend you pause the program until you feel comfortable again, and maybe skip ahead to the next track. This program is not psychotherapy or any substitute for professional physical or mental health care. I really wish you the best with this, both for your own sake and for the positive effects that your own well-being has on the people around you. To pick up on a theme that runs throughout this program, you can affect your outer world somewhat, and for sure that's worth doing as skillfully as you can. But you can affect your inner world much, much more. So the attention you give to your inner world through this program and the beneficial changes you gradually make there will have a high payoff in your life and will ripple further outward to benefit others as well. Well, let's get started. As a way into this topic of how you can use your mind to change your brain, to change your mind for the better, I'd like to tell you a story I once heard about a Native American First People woman toward the end of her life. She was asked, "Grandmother, how did you become so happy? How did you become so effective, so wise, so loved? What did you actually do?" She paused for a moment, reflected, and she said, I think it's because when I was young, I realized that in my heart were two wolves, one of love and one of hate. And I also realized that everything depended on which one I fed each day." That's really a profound story for me personally, and I get the shivers every time I tell it. There are two key takeaways in it, of course. One is certainly the recognition of the wolf of hate, the capacity for ill will, aggression, envy, hatred, rage, violence, even war, in almost everyone's heart, certainly in my own heart. Owning your own personal wolf of hate is actually an important step in having healthy, loving relationships with other people. Because if we hate the wolf of hate, or if we push it down into a corner and try to fight with it, that actually ends up biting us as well as other people. So later on in this program, we'll be exploring how to come into a better, healthier relationship with the quote-unquote wolf of hate that's inside each one of us. But for our purposes right now, I want to focus on, for me, the second major takeaway from this story, which is the question of which wolf will we feed? We're always feeding one wolf or another. We're always growing or reducing one capacity, one tendency or another in oneself. This is very hopeful because we truly can change ourselves for the better. And it leads to a focus on personal responsibility. The choices we make in terms of which wolf we feed don't just change our minds, they also change our brains.